Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. Judge blocks Trump's move to strip Harvard of foreign student rights. Court says policy targeted Harvard's independence, putting 7,000 plus international students at risk. UN chief warns Gaza entering cruelest phase as Israeli offensive escalates and food trucks are looted amid starvation. Guterres says a teaspoon of relief is no match for the flood of humanitarian aid needed. Germany arrests women after knife attack in Hamburg train station injures 17, including 4 with life-threatening wounds. Police say suspect acted alone and may have been in psychological crisis. No political motive found so far. 5 years after George Floyd's death caused by asphyxiation due to a Minneapolis police officer's knee pressing, family and community gathered for a night of remembrance and reflection, calling for continued push for justice and police reform. Trump declares he's not looking for a deal with the EU, doubling down on 50% tariff threat as European stock markets nosedive. Meanwhile, the EU urges a trade agreement grounded in respect, not threats. Iran's foreign minister has called nuclear talks with the US complicated as the 5th round of Rome discussions ends without any breakthrough. Both sides agree progress was made, but deep divisions remain. US lifts key sanctions on Syria, authorizing transactions with government entities. Rubio waives Caesar's Act for 180 days as Trump demands Syria expel foreign militants. Federal judge orders return of Guatemalan man wrongfully deported under Trump administration. Court slams troubling due to violations after DOJ admits error in migrants' case. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described the ongoing nuclear talks with the United States as complicated, but expressed hope for progress. After the 5th round of talks in Rome, Araghchi called the discussions the most professional so far. He emphasized that while challenges remain, the negotiations are moving in a reasonable direction. Here's what the Iranian Foreign Minister has said.
یکی از حرفه‌ای‌ترین ادوار مذاکراتی بود که تا الان داشتیم. و خب ما یک بار دیگه مواضع و اصول جمهوری اسلامی رو در خصوص مذاکرات بیان کردیم. مواضع ما کاملا روشن هست و ما بر اونها ایستادگی داریم. فکر می‌کنم الان یک درک بهتری و روشن‌تری از مواضع ما در نزد طرف آمریکایی.
While Iran was calling these talks complicated, on the other hand, a senior U.S. official also described the talks as constructive and noted that both sides agreed to meet again soon. Despite the progress, significant hurdles still exist, including Iran's uranium enrichment and demands for sanctions relief. The talks mediated by Oman aim to resolve a decades-long dispute over Iran's nuclear program. Araghchi reiterated Iran's stance on its right to enrich uranium. While the U.S. pushes for limits, both sides are now reviewing proposals and preparing for the next round of discussions. The location for the next round will be confirmed soon. Kyiv is on high alert after a combined drone and missile strike by Russian forces early Saturday. The attack triggered fires across multiple districts, injuring at least 2 people. Eyewitnesses captured the explosion as a loud blast rocked the sky, sending debris flying. Let's hear that video. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko confirmed that drones hit residential buildings, including in Solomiansky and Dniprovsky districts, causing major damage. The strike comes as Ukraine and Russia begin the largest prisoner swap of the war, exchanging 390 soldiers and civilians. The first phase of the swap was agreed upon in Istanbul last week, with more exchanges expected in the coming days. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has vowed to bring back all Ukrainian soldiers and civilians held in Russia. In a national address, he confirmed nearly the number of people had been released in the first phase of the largest prisoner swap since the war began. Zelensky promised further stages in the coming days. Here's what the Ukrainian president has said.
Обов'язково повернемо всіх. Кожен наш громадянин, кожен український військовий і цивільний. Всі українські заручники, яких утримують в Росії. Ми всіх їх маємо визволити. Сьогодні вдома майже 400 людей, 390. Це військові та цивільні.
On the other hand, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Moscow is ready to present peace terms to Ukraine after the prisoner exchange is completed. Here's what the Russian Foreign Minister has said.
Также привержены тем договоренностям, которые были достигнуты недавно в Стамбуле между делегациями России и Украины. Мы завершаем нашу подготовительную работу по составлению списка для обмена военнопленными по принципу 1000 на 1000. И мы...
U.S. President Donald Trump threatened Apple and other smartphone manufacturers with a 25% tariff unless their devices are built in the United States. Trump initially said the tariff would apply only to Apple, an unusual move to single out a specific company in trade policy. However, he later expanded the threat to include all smartphone makers. While Apple designs its products in the United States, most iPhone assembly occurs in China, which remains embroiled in the trade war with the United States. Apple has announced plans to shift some production to other countries, including India, but Trump has said this would not satisfy his demands. In a post on Truth Social, Trump wrote that he had long ago informed Tim Cook of Apple that he expects their iPhones that will be sold in the United States of America to be manufactured and built in the United States, not India or any place else. Apple's main rival, South Korea's Samsung, finds itself in a similar situation, with most of its production in Vietnam, China, and India. The constant pressure from the White House has taken a toll in Apple's stock price. Apple shares closed down 3% in New York on Friday. Other smartphone companies are likely to take a hit too. Meanwhile, let's listen into what Trump has to say about his tariffs on the smartphones.
It would be more, it would be also Samsung and anybody that makes that product, otherwise it wouldn't be fair. So anybody that makes that product, and that'll start on, I guess, at the end of June, it'll come out. I think we have that appropriately done by the end of June. So if they make that product, now, again, when they build their plant here, there's no tariff. So they're going to be building plants here, but I had an understanding with him that he wouldn't be doing this. He said he's going to India to build plants. I said, that's okay to go to India, but you're not going to sell into here without tariffs.
U.S. President Donald Trump has rekindled his trade war with the European Union. He has threatened over 50% tariffs. Trump first raised the issue of EU tariffs in an early morning post on his Truth Social network. He doubled down later in the day, telling reporters in the Oval Office that there was nothing the 27-nation bloc could do to change his mind. While adding to this, Trump also denied that his tariffs would hurt American businesses. Let's in fact listen in.
I'm not looking for a deal. I mean, we've set the deal, it's at 50%. But again, there is no tariff if they build their plant here. Now, if somebody comes in and wants to build a plant here, I can talk to them about a little bit of a delay. But, while they're building their plant, which is something I think that would be appropriate, maybe, we'll determine that.
Trump imposed sweeping tariffs on most of the world on what he called Liberation Day on April 2nd, with a baseline 10% plus steeper duties, including a 20% levy on the EU markets, were thrown into turmoil but calmed after he paused the bigger tariffs for 90 days. Trump has since claimed some early successes in deals struck with Britain and with China, the world's second biggest economy, but talks with the EU have failed to make much progress, with Brussels recently threatening to hit US goods worth nearly 100 billion euros with tariffs if it does not lower the duties on European goods. Wall Street's main indexes were all down around 1% 2 hours into trading, with the tech-heavy Nasdaq at one stage losing 1.5% before rallying, while Apple shares sank 2.5%. The EU's trade chief said the bloc would work for a trade deal with Washington based on respect, not threats. US President Donald Trump signed a series of executive orders aimed at expanding the country's nuclear energy capabilities. The orders focus on speeding up reactor testing, reducing regulatory barriers, and allowing the construction of new reactors on federal land. Trump outlined a goal to increase the nation's nuclear power capacity from 100 gigawatts to 400 gigawatts by 2050. The measures also include a pilot program to bring new reactors online by 2026. Trump emphasized the importance of nuclear energy in achieving energy dominance and ensuring energy security. The orders will also streamline the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's process, requiring decisions on reactor licenses within 18 months. Trump's push for a stronger nuclear industry comes amid growing demand for electricity, particularly from tech companies and AI ventures. Let's listen in to what US President Donald Trump has said.
Well, thank you very much. We have a very big announcement today. It has to do with nuclear energy and other things. And this is all nuclear. It's a hot industry. It's a brilliant industry. You have to do it right. It's become very safe and environmental, yes, 100%.
Blasts were heard in Gaza as Israel resumed air and ground operations. No comment was made by the Israeli military till now. Prime Minister Netanyahu has said the operations will end with Israel controlling the Gaza Strip. The UN chief warned of the cruelest phase for Palestinians as the humanitarian situation deteriorates and aid remains low. Over a dozen aid trucks were looted in southern Gaza. Aid delivery remains low, with only a small fraction of necessary supplies reaching the region. Antonio Guterres called on Israel to allow more aid to enter. Let's listen to what he said.
The supplies, 160,000 pallets, enough to fill nearly 9,000 trucks, are waiting. This is my appeal for life-saving aid for the long-suffering people of Gaza. Let's do it right, and let's do it right away. Thank you.
On the ground in Gaza, families remain struggling with basic needs like food, water in short supply. The latest reports from Gaza's health ministry put the death toll since March at over 3,600 people, bringing the total number of lives lost in the conflict to more than 53,000, the majority of which are civilians. Syria has welcomed the U.S. decision to lift sanctions, calling it a positive step towards recovery. The move follows the end of Bashar al-Assad's regime and opens the door for new investments. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated the lifting aims to promote stability and prosperity in Syria. The decision announced by President Trump comes after pressure from Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Sanctions relief is conditional on Syria ensuring the safety of minorities as well as preventing terrorist havens. The U.S. State Department has also issued a waiver to allow foreign partners to support Syria's reconstruction, including essential services like electricity, water, and sanitation. With sanctions lifted, the U.S. aims to foster a new relationship and promote lasting peace. Outrage over George Floyd's killing by police catapulted Black Lives Matter into one of the largest protest movements in U.S. history, with angry crowds chanting the slogan at rallies from Los Angeles to Washington. But 5 years on, the protesters are gone and an iconic monument outside the White House has been erased. leaving many to wonder if the movement blew its chance for historic change by failing to win over the American public. Despite widespread revulsion at racism and police brutality in the wake of Floyd's May 2020 death, many turned away when BLM activists broadened their message to calling for the defunding of law enforcement. National support for the Black Lives Matter movement is now 52%, according to PEW research, down 15 percentage points since June 2020. A month after police officer Derek Chauvin killed Floyd during an arrest in Minneapolis, initially Floyd's death was hailed as a catalyst for a national reckoning similar to the 1960s civil rights movement. There have been police reforms in some states primarily focused on limiting the amount of force officers can use, as well as local programs to send unarmed responders instead of police to selected call-outs. However, many say these measures are insufficient. Now we move on to Europe. Germany police have arrested a woman after at least 12 people were injured in a knife attack at the main station in the northern city of Hamburg. Some of the injured sustained life-threatening injuries in the stabbing, although the exact number remained unclear. The suspect, police subsequently said, was a 39-year-old woman who was thought to have acted alone. The police has reported that investigations into the incident are running at full speed. However, the official has not given any indication of a possible motive. According to the German media, the attack took place around 6 p.m. in the middle of rush hour at the end of the working week. The suspect was thought to have carried out the attack against passengers at the station. Images of the scene showed access to the platforms at one end of the station blocked off by police and people being loaded into waiting ambulances. Some of the victims in the attack were being treated on board waiting trains in the station. Bild reported, Germany has been rocked in recent months by a series of violent attacks with often jihadist or far-right extremist motivations that have put security at the top of the agenda. The most recent on Sunday saw 4 people were injured in a stabbing at a bar in the city of Bielefeld. Considering these events, the question of security and the immigrant origin of many of the attackers was a major topic during Germany's recent election campaign. In the latest turn of events in India-Pakistan conflict, India has accused Pakistan of sponsoring decades of terror attacks, including the 2008 Mumbai attacks and the recent massacre of tourists in Pahalgam, during a strong statement delivered at the United Nations Security Council. Speaking at an open debate on the protection of civilians in armed conflict, India's permanent representative to the UN Ambassador Parvatanen Harish slammed Pakistan for making baseless allegations and pointed to a long history of cross-border terrorism backed by Islamabad. He stated that the primary targets of Pak-sponsored attacks have been civilians, with the clear intent of undermining India's progress, prosperity, and morale. The envoy asserted that Pakistan's participation in a discussion on civilian protection is a direct affront to the international community, given its record of supporting terror groups that target non-combatants. The comments come in the wake of heightened tensions between the two nations after the Pahalgam terror attack, which claimed 26 lives. India responded by conducting precise airstrikes on terror infrastructure located inside of Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir on May 7th. In retaliation, Pakistan launched attempts to target Indian military installations on May 8th, 9th, and 10th. Indian forces responded firmly to these attempts. The escalation on the ground came to a halt after both sides reached an understanding on May 10th following talks between their military commanders. Leading Venezuelan opposition politician Juan Pablo Guanipa is arrested on charges of conspiring to sabotage upcoming parliamentary and regional elections. that the opposition has prompted to boycott. Guanipa, a 60-year-old former member of parliament and ally of opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, is detained amid rising tensions before Sunday's election. Guanipa went into hiding after the July 2024 presidential vote, which the opposition and much of the international community say was won by opposition candidate Edmundo González Urrutia. 70 people, including nationals of Ecuador, Argentina, Germany, Serbia, and Pakistan, have been detained over an alleged plot to target Sunday's elections. The suspects allegedly planned to plant bombs in hospitals, metro stations, police stations, and power plants. Authorities say they seized explosives, weapons, detonators, and cash. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio condemns the arrests, calling them unjustified in a new wave of repression by the Maduro regime. Guanipa posts on social media that he has been kidnapped by Maduro's forces and says he is unsure that what will happen to him, but believes that the fight against the dictatorship will win. Let's listen into Guanipa.
Queridos hermanos, si están viendo este video es porque he sido detenido, secuestrado por la dictadura de Nicolás Maduro. Esta es una lucha que ha sido difícil, compleja, porque nos estamos enfrentando a un régimen autoritario que ha decidido mantenerse en el poder a pesar de la impresionante manifestación de voluntad popular que dio el pueblo venezolano el día 28 de julio. ¡Qué grande es el pueblo venezolano!
Meanwhile, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro said during an election campaign that over 50 mercenaries have been captured ahead of the May 25th legislative and gubernatorial elections, which the country's largest opposition coalition has urged voters to boycott. Let's listen in.
Por ahí, los estertores del fascismo han pretendido ingresar mercenarios. Ya hoy llevamos capturados más de 50 mercenarios que ingresaban a poner bombas o a hacer ataques violentos al país.
At least 12 people have been injured in a hot air balloon crash near an archaeological site near Mexico City. As per reports, the balloon undertook a forced landing in San Martin de las Piramides after hitting an air pocket. The 12 people who were aboard are being treated for injuries at a local clinic now. Images shared by authorities show that the crash occurred a short distance from the Pyramid of the Moon, a popular tourist site in the ancient city of Teotihuacan. The balloon lay draped over fencing and power lines along Tuxpan Avenue, a two-lane road just over 1,000 feet from the base of the pyramid. The Civil Protection Agency added that the balloon was operated by a tour company that offers hot air balloon rides to view the pyramids from above. The Attorney General's Office for the State of Mexico reported that they are investigating a 29-year-old man whom police have detained. According to the Mexican government, Teotihuacan was once one of the largest cities in pre-Columbian Mesoamerica, and the pyramids of the Sun and the Moon form the twin centers of the ancient ruins there. In northeastern Nigeria, a jihadist attack has left at least 9 civilians dead in Borno State. Boko Haram militants ambushed the village of Gajibo Thursday evening, opening fire on residents and engaging with anti-jihadist militia fighters. The shootout also led to the deaths of 2 militia members. Several others were injured in the assault. Nigerian troops from the nearby Dikwa town responded quickly, pushing the militants out of the village. In the aftermath, the jihadists have lost 10 men. The attack comes amid a recent surge in violence by Boko Haram and Islamic State West Africa province, which have intensified their raids across Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states. This violence has claimed over 40,000 lives and displaced millions, with the conflict spilling into neighborhood countries. 8 people have been found guilty after U.S. reality TV star Kim Kardashian was robbed at gunpoint of millions of dollars worth of jewelry in Paris nearly a decade ago. The 4 who took part in the heist were given sentences of up to 8 years, mostly suspended, and they will not return to prison because of time served. 2 people have been acquitted as well. 9 men and 1 woman were accused of carrying out or aiding the armed burglary of $10 million worth of jewelry, including a diamond engagement ring, during Paris Fashion Week in 2016. Kardashian's lawyers said in a statement that she looks forward to putting this tragic episode behind her. Listen in.
Madame Kardashian a été informée de la décision. Elle est satisfaite. Justice a été rendue et c'était là son seul souhait, que justice soit rendue. C'est maintenant chose faite. Elle va pouvoir passer à autre chose. Je vous remercie.
On the night between 3rd and 4th October 2016, as Kardashian was in her room at the Hotel de Portales in central Paris, a gang of men made their way into the building. DNA evidence for Omar Eid Khidachi, 69, and Eunice Abbas, 71, placed them at the scene of the crime, and the 2 have admitted their involvement. Khidachi, who is now disabled, deaf, and mute, was sentenced to 8 years in prison on Friday, 5 of which were suspended due to time already served. He will not return to prison like all the others convicted. With most of those convicted now in their 60s and 70s, the group has been dubbed as grandpa robbers by French media. But since the beginning of the trial in April, both prosecutors and civil parties have vigorously pushed back against notions the robbers were harmless. Prosecutor General Anne-Dominique Mervilli had urged the jury not to be swayed by their age and health conditions, describing the defendants as seasoned robbers when they carried out the heist. Now we move on to Africa. Nearly a third of the 260 miners trapped underground at the Sibanye Stillwater Kloof gold mine in South Africa have been rescued with no fatalities or injuries reported. The workers were stranded after a hoist system malfunctioned on Thursday. By Friday afternoon, 79 miners had been safely brought to the surface, with the remaining workers provided food while awaiting their rescue. Union officials confirmed no harm came to the miners, though concerns about food, water shortages persisted. Relatives of those still underground expressed anxiety, hoping for the safe return of their loved ones. Sibanye is one of South Africa's leading mining companies, operating some of the world's deepest gold mines. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.